I got fed up and I've been quiet for too long. And I got fed up because I became tired of um, trying to express something that wasn't landing. And I think it was landing actually, but I think what happened was that I had in my head these ideas that I wanted to share to the world, and they became so big that I wasn't sure how to break them down. But this is an important part of building a brand. And that's what I want to talk about today. The idea that when we are building a business, or very often when people are promoting their business, they try branding their business instead of building a brand. Now, I've been working over the last 12 to 18 months on building a brand. And I had to go silent for 6 months to recover. And I'm not saying that that's the way to do it, but personally, I experienced burnout. It was a mental health crisis, and I've had to take a step back and come back to it. Now, the plus side to that is I've got a lot of clarity, and I also realize that in many ways my perceptions and message have not changed, which is fundamental to building a brand. And I want to talk about that today because I see so often online people talking about their branding and people working on their branding and people developing their branding without actually understanding what a brand is. And I also see many brand experts, how to build a brand on LinkedIn, or how to build a brand on Instagram, or how to build a brand on Facebook, whatever it is. All these people talking about how to build a brand. And nowhere in their content do they ever seem to explain what a brand is. And I see it as my personal, what I don't know what the word is, my personal mission, I suppose, to help people genuinely understand what it is they're doing when they're building a brand. Now, I'm not gonna lie, like in the past, I have done a lot of color branding. I'm passionate about colors. I love building color palettes. It's one of my favorite parts of designing a brand is looking at the colors, making sure the colors work together, balancing those colors, and importantly, and this step is often missed, deciding or determining how those colors are going to be used. So that's one of my personal favorites. Now, the downside of me talking about that a lot online meant that I saw a lot of people placing a lot more value, and this was not just because of me, obviously, but I saw a lot of people placing a lot more value or priority on the colors that they were choosing rather than the brands that they were building. And the same happens when people are talking about typography and fonts. People spend a lot more time talking about what fonts they're using and, which ones are going to show integrity or whatever, rather than actually building a brand. So I want to use this time today to talk about what a brand is. And then I'm just going to keep talking about it over and over and over and over and over and over again, even if I get bored about it. No, I'm not going to get bored about it, even if you get bored about it. So first of all, there are two main concepts of a brand that people get hung up on, right? But they're only the surface part of the brand, right? So there's the external part of the brand and there's the internal part of the brand. Now, the external part of the brand is the bit that people get hung up on, and they think they've done the internal stuff, but they haven't. So let me explain. So the external part of the brand, you've got the presentation, which is what the business or the business owner expresses. So whether it's a personal brand or a business brand or whatever. So that would be the colors, the fonts, the jingles, how the content is presented, how it's styled, the words that are used in the content. All of that is the expression of the brand. So that's the external expression of the brand. And that is the bit that a lot of people spend a lot of time focusing on. And what they don't look at very often is what the experience of that brand is. Now, the experience of the brand is so crucial, right? It is so crucial. So how the brand is experienced is not just how people view the brand based on what the brand expresses, but how people experience the content, how people experience the buying process, how people experience the products or services, how people experience after sales care. All of that, the experience of the brand are what build the brand. But the experience and the expression of the brand, how the consumer experiences the brand and how the business expresses the brand need to be aligned, because if they're not aligned, if the business is, for example, promising like a fun, energetic, lovely experience and the customer gets something that's disjointed and unprofessional and stressful to experience, there's going to be a misalignment. That is not building a brand. What that's doing is disappointing your customers. Right. So you have to have some alignment between what the brand expresses and what the customer experiences. And you can't do that successfully unless you look at the inside of the brand. Now, the inside of the brand, that's essentially what it is you're doing. Like, and I don't mean the products or services that you're selling, they are part of the customer experience. Again, they're an external thing. It's like, what's the point of your brand? Like, why do you even exist? Like, what is the purpose? Seriously, what is the purpose of your brand? If you do not know the purpose of your brand, you do not have a brand. And it's really hard to nail, and it's really hard to fixate on it, and it is really hard to put your flag in the sand and say, this is what I'm about, or this is what my business is about. But if you don't do that, you don't have a brand. And a really good example, and I'll talk about this one a lot, is the Steve Jobs example. He was fed up with the fact that computers were like really ugly, really bulky, really hard to use, inaccessible to most people. What he wanted to do was create a computer that people could use in the office or at home, that was intuitive to use and that didn't look clunky and ugly, right? That's really crucial. So that was his big vision. He didn't know how to do it. It's what he wanted to do. And that single mindedness basically can be distilled into the Apple that we see today. So the Apple that we see today is still about bringing technology and computing and handheld devices or whatever it is to the population, and doing it in a way that is intuitive and aesthetically pleasing, right? So it's not these big, clunky, wiry computers. That's not what he wanted. And it's what makes Apple Apple. It's why some people hate Apple, and it's why some people love Apple. The love-hate thing doesn't matter. What matters is that there was a singular purpose, and from that purpose, they created a promise, and then they kept delivering on that promise. And anytime they dropped the ball on that promise, they went back to the drawing board and they made sure to deliver again in spades. Because you cannot always deliver. It doesn't matter how wonderful you are or how well intentioned you are. Sometimes, businesses are going to drop the ball. Sometimes things are going to not hit the mark, but you cannot know if you've dropped the ball or not hit the mark if you do not have a distinct purpose and a clear promise. How do you know that you're not reaching your goal? How do you know that you're not achieving what you set out to achieve if you don't know what it is you're setting out to achieve? Fundamentally, that is the brand, right? So your purpose and your promise. Without those two things, the other things don't matter. And if you do not have a clear purpose, which can be, informed by your brand values and your vision and all of that stuff, and by values, I don't mean virtues. Like, people get so confused between I'm on a rant because I've been quiet for a long time and now it's all spilling out. But people get really hung up on things like, what their values are, and they'll say, oh, my values are kindness and integrity and honesty and all of these kinds of things, which is great, but they're not values, they're virtues. They are universally accepted modes of behavior that everybody says is like a minimum standard for contribution to society, right? They're virtues. They are the minimum standard. Saying that you've got kindness as one of your values is like saying I'm a minimum standard human being. Sorry if that sounds blunt or bold, but that's basically what it is. Your values are unique, defining aspects of who you are. They are drivers to you. They can be underpinned by your virtues, and you can live virtuously and you can run your business virtuously, but your values are not the same. So a good way to look at values, for example, I've used this example in the past. If you've got a car company, so you've got like, Lamborghini and you've got Toyota and you've got Hyundai, and I can't think of any other examples, Ford or Citroen or whatever, got all these car companies. They all produce a box with four wheels and driving. And in the box, there's places for people to sit and you can play music and there's windows, right? That's basically, they all produce the same product, a car, right? But every single brand does it differently. Why? Because they prioritize their values differently. So you may be producing, so like here's a list of values that you might be considering for cars. So in terms of a car, a virtue would be something like safety. All cars need to have an element of safety. That's a virtue. It's a given. It's a minimum standard. That's not a value. But things like luxuriousness, comfort, elegance, economy, eco-friendliness, all of these different things, right? Those aesthetics, right? All of these different things play a part in the overall branding of that company. And what each company does, either consciously or unconsciously, they prioritize those values. They're like, well, for us, this is a luxury brand, and we value speed and we value sportiness and we value whatever. We value XYZ above all of other things. And then obviously safety, the virtue, is always there. But another brand was like, well, we're focusing on environmental friendliness and it's got to be economical so more people can use it. That's their priority. And because that's their priority, the way that they design their cars is different. The way that they talk about their cars is different. The way that they photograph their cars is different, right? Like, you're not going to show a Ferrari driving through a forest, right? You're just not going to do it. It's just not, they don't go. That's not what the value is. So unless you know the purpose of your brand, unless you know the value of your brand, unless you know where you're going to and what change it is you want to affect on the world, you do not have a brand. And that's basically it. So back to the beginning. If you want to build a brand, stop branding your business. You cannot effectively brand your business unless you know what message it is you are communicating, unless you know what your purpose is, unless you know why you are in business in the first place. And I'm not talking about some wanky, this is my why. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the process. But you got to go bigger than that. I'm not going to lie. I've been in burnout, right? But I've also been bored, like hugely bored with the content on the internet because everybody talks about the same things. Like everybody's following the same template. Everybody's using ChatGPT or something. I don't know. They all talk about their niches and their ideal clients and, what their values are. It's all the same stuff. That's not branding. I'm sorry, it's not. And I don't care how many branding experts there are out there. I don't care how many people you go to who say, I can help you with your brand. And then they give you some wanky advice like you need to niche or you need to find your ideal client. That's not branding. I'm sorry. If you want to build a brand, you've got to do the hard work. You've got to invest in yourself and you've got to be afraid. You've got to know that you're setting out to achieve something or accomplish something that you do not know how to achieve. Right? Like if you know how to achieve it, that's not a goal. That's just a task. So there you go. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. I really just needed to get that off my chest. I'm going to go and make lunch now. Have a lovely day, everyone. And I will see you all later. Bye.